Way to go, Fritz. I spent about an hour this morning chatting to a group, a mastermind of accountants around the topic of sleep. And so we spoke about the power of power naps, if you can get it right.
Oh, he's a master at it. He will sleep exactly for 10 minutes and then he wakes up wide awake after 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's the trick, is not to turn it into a siesta, which is what I end up doing. And then
it's not so romantic when you're having a dinner in a restaurant and he falls asleep over his soup. You know?
That's not really necessary, Sharon.
One would hope nearly drowning in potato and mash might not be the best thing for a dinner.
Welcome. Hello, Heather. Welcome, everyone. Well, let's to arrive in the cafe, as the tradition goes, shall I invite you to do a grounding mindfulness arrival exercise with me? Feel free to lower your gaze or close your eyes. And for the next 2 or 3 minutes, we're going to give us a chance to really arrive in our bodies here, because our minds can often be somewhere, but our bodies somewhere else. So bring your awareness to your heart area, to your chest, and simply notice your breath. Accept your breath. And then if you would like to change it in any way, feel free to do so. Perhaps breathing a bit deeper into your belly, perhaps lengthening your exhale. We have these beautiful senses that we can use to always bring us to the moment. So let's start with hearing. Bring your awareness to what you can hear. Perhaps to more subtle sounds, what's happening outside of your space. And although your eyes are closed, what can you see? Blackness, maybe some light reflecting off your eyelids. And then bring your awareness to your sense of touch. Can you feel any fabric on your skin, any cool air or warm air? Can you sense the chair or the sofa supporting the back of your legs? And then bring your awareness to your nose, to your nostrils. Can you feel the air entering? Is there any smell, any subtle smell that you can sense? And what about taste? Is there any residual taste in your mouth, perhaps from coffee or tea? Perhaps there's an acidic taste, perhaps it's neutral. And at your own time, take 3 deep, slow, relaxing breaths, allowing your senses to bring you right here into your body, into this Zoom, into this room. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes to let the light back in and take in the friendly faces and smiles in front of you. And welcome to the Resilience Cafe, where Sharon is going to start us on a very interesting topic. I know what she's going to share, and I'm even excited.
Yeah, did any of you manage to find time to watch that video that I sent you? Yes?
Yes, absolutely. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically the topic of today is your black widow spider, which is the inner critic. And we spoke a little bit in our very first session about the art of reframing and what it means to be able to shift perspective when you feel hijacked by your emotions. And often those emotions are sparked by this inner voice or this critical voice saying things to you. And this inner voice comes a long way back from our upbringing to our socialization, that we get conditioned. You get told things by friends or by caregivers or by people that were influential in your life. And these little voices stay with us for many, many years. And sometimes we need to take a good hard look at them and ask ourselves, are these voices actually legitimate? Is it really true? And we can actually, if we put our mind to it and we become more self-aware and more conscious, we can actually work at reframing or befriending that black widow, rather than trying to squash it, because it's very much part of us, you know. So if you go around saying, I shouldn't be thinking that, I shouldn't be saying that to myself, all that happens is that the voice gets stronger and stronger. But if we can figure out a way to make friends with all parts of ourselves and say, okay, let me give this black widow spider a friendly name like Arthur, and welcome him and accept that he's there trying to protect me or to tell me something, sometimes we can actually start to reframe and work more positively and start to minimize the impact of those disempowering beliefs on our lives. So a quick story. Frederick, you know this story as well. We had a colleague once in South Africa, a guy called Philip, who grew up with a mom and a family where they were all in the kind of technical trade. And this person, Philip, had a great dream to become a business consultant. And he said to his mother, I want to do a BCom and I want to become a business consultant. And his mother very clearly said to him, Philip, you're not going to make it as a business consultant. Remember, the history of our family is that we become technicians, we study the trades, and this is what you should do. You know, don't think about it. You're not cut out to be a business consultant. Forget about that. And he had this nagging dream in his life to become a consultant. But continued in terms of what his mother's dream for him was. He became a technician, he studied the technical trade, and eventually when he got a job, he started saving money and he got himself through university and did a BCom at his own cost, and to become a business consultant. Never really told her. And eventually he joined the consulting business, and that's where we met him, and we became consultants together with different clients. And then one day, Fritz actually found out that he had landed a contract in the motor industry. And I grew up in the motor industry. I was an HR director in VW and Audi for many years. So Fritz said to me, why don't you just give him a call, you know, and say that you've got a lot of experience. We worked together on quite a few other projects with him. Why don't you offer support? Maybe you and Philip can work together on this project in the motor industry. So I called him up and I said, Philip, I believe you've landed an exciting opportunity. You know, I've got loads of experience in that, and just wondering if we could collaborate and how I could support you on this piece of work. There was a deathly silence on the other side of the phone. He said, Sharon, are you telling me I'm not going to make it? Are you telling me I'm not good enough for this kind of work? It feels to me like you're trying to supervise me. And of course, his mother's voice, the inner critic, was playing out in his life saying, you're not going to make it, you're not good enough. And he put down the phone very aggressively. He phoned that client and he resigned from that job. He had what we call an emotional hijack. You know, his black widow spider, which is the inner critic in his life, was so strong because of his conditioning that whenever you just touch one little web of that spider, the black spider overreacts. Imagine this little spider in the center of a web. If you just touch one little strand, in other words, you get one sniff of feedback that's related to your issue, which is your black widow spider, that spider runs out and overreacts. So the emotion that you feel is far, far greater than what's needed or what's appropriate for that situation. Have you ever had that feeling? Like you get an email from a boss and immediately you think negative thoughts, like I'm in trouble or I'm going to get negative feedback. In the meantime, they want you to say thank you and congratulations. Or you don't get included in a project team. You get left out and immediately all your fears of rejection come up because you've got a little black widow spider that says, I'm not good enough. And of course, we've all got that. All of us suffer with a lack of self-esteem. And we also suffer with something called the impostor syndrome, where you at any moment expecting someone to tap you on the shoulder and say, you don't know what you're talking about, do you? The impostor syndrome. Most people are struggling with these kinds of things. So I thought it would be lovely today just to explore a little bit deeper about what might be tripping you up in terms of your black widow spider in your life. So I'm going to share with you one or two slides, and then Celine and I will take you through an exercise to explore this. Let me just share. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So if we take it, if I show you this picture, you know, I'm sure you've all seen this iceberg model in your life, that whatever happens, what people can see happening in your life is only the tip of the iceberg. The behaviors that you can witness is only the tip of the iceberg. But underneath that, we have our beliefs and values, you know, the things that you believe about yourself that may or may not be true. And these inform how you behave. And then, of course, at a lower level, and I'm just oversimplifying this now, at a much lower level, there's the identity of who I am. And that identity is quite deep-rooted, you know, how you see your identity, how you see yourself in the world, what kind of person you think you are in your being also has an influence on how you behave. So it's always a good idea when we want to start working with ourselves is to drill down below the waterline of this iceberg model. So let's look at an example here, just to make it more real. So say, for example, the behavior is I lash out and become defensive when I feel criticized. In other words, whenever I sniff criticism, I tend to overreact and become quite attacking every time I'm criticized. What's underneath that might well be a belief that says I'm not good enough, I need recognition. This nagging voice that says I'm not good enough. Who knows where that comes from, and does it matter where it comes from? It's there and it's influencing how you behave. And at an even deeper level, it might be a feeling of being inferior to others. You're always comparing yourself to others and feeling inferior to others. And this is also influencing how you behave. It could also be very positive. Let's look at a positive one. I take risks and try things that others wouldn't dare. This is one I think is applicable to my life. You know, we've tried things and got engaged in projects. Claudius will know, taken on wellness centers, you know, immigrated at the age of 50, did all sorts of things that many wouldn't dare, because underneath that, I've got quite a strong belief that I don't want mediocrity in my life. I want to step out there and experiment, because I don't want to just be mediocre. So that's quite a strong belief and value that I hold in my life. What's underneath that? I'm resourceful and talented. I know that I've got talents that will carry me through, and I don't mind trying things out and experimenting, because I can know that I've got the resources and the talents to carry me through. So as you can see, the self-talk that's indicative here is often positive, but it can also be negative. So the big thing that I'd like to just explore is how can you know your black widow and how can you befriend your black widow? I know that there are some techniques that get you to try and kill the black widow, and that's also it works for some people. I know, Jim, you've been through a recent exercise where you had to take rolled up newspaper and bash the black widow to pieces in that experience that you've just had. But there's also another option is that to actually notice little Arthur when he pops up his head and go, okay, take a deep breath. There you are again. What are you trying to tell me? And let me see if I can choose another response right now, knowing that it's actually my issue, this. It's not the other person. It's actually my issue that's playing up here. How can I reframe, knowing that my black widow is talking here, not really me, not really the higher self, not really the true me, but there's some other voice that's tripping me up here right now. Let me just pause there for a moment. Comments?
Sharon, I'm curious, what would you say is the difference between the black widow spider and your inner critic, or my inner critic, and a saboteur?
Yeah, it's the same thing for me, Jim. It's the same thing. So I'm just playfully calling it the black widow spider because it's got this tendency to overreact. When you just touch the web, it's got this tendency to overreact, and it often manifests as the inner critic, the saboteur, the voice that says you're not good enough, you're not going to make it. Philip, you're not going to make it. Just forget about this. You know, that tape that plays. And we all have those tapes. And the big question today is, what do we do when that tape plays? Claudius, maybe you'd like to say something here.
Yes, I think that your description of the deeper levels is so important here, because the theme can get embedded not only in our behaviors, it gets embedded in our values, what we pay attention to, gets embedded in our beliefs of what we think is possible. And as you so correctly point out, it gets embedded in our identity as well. Yeah. So by being able to, as you pointing out, by being able to get in touch with that response, that part of it that is responding like this, the release of that trapped energy into a different quality of becoming it's a superb investment to make. just to take the risk to go there, to face the Black Widow. It's a superb risk to take. So that's all I want to say. It's very appropriate for me right at this time as well.
Yeah, so Celine is going to challenge us now with some typical Black Widows that some of us might be holding, to take us through a visceral experience of it, and then we'll go into smaller group discussions. Thanks, Claudius, that was very useful.
Sure. And what I invite you to do is I'm going to read out just a few beliefs. And if you resonate with that belief in any way, I invite you to stand if you're seated, and if you're standing and you hear a belief and you resonate with that, to sit. This is a non-judgmental exercise, so don't worry. In fact, if you want to switch off your camera, you can, but it's not about, you don't need to be in view of the camera. I'd like you to go inward and simply listen to my voice, and stand up if you resonate with what's been said, or sit down. Is that clear?
So if you don't resonate, you sit down.
Or no, if you don't, you either stay seated, or if you are standing, then you just stay standing. So each time you hear one of the beliefs that resonates with you, you stand up if you're seated, or you sit down if you're standing. So that could happen multiple times.
Oh, so you just do the opposite to what you were doing if it resonates.
Yes.
There's movement. There's movement if it
There's
resonates.
movement when it resonates, and if it doesn't resonate with you, then there's no movement. All right. I won't move because I'm going to be reading them. I don't know enough. I'm not enough. They'll find out I'm a fraud. I can't have it all. I'm not a great leader. I don't have what it takes. I don't have all the answers. I'm not motivated enough. My industry is too unstable. This is hard work. People won't like me if I'm successful or powerful. Thank you. I invite you to take a seat if you are standing. Would anybody like to reflect on that exercise before we go into the breakout room?
I definitely stood for quite a few of those. I didn't get a chance to sit down.
I just want to say, I think that many of these statements are little webs, part of the web. And one of them, if you touch one of them, you know, you wake up, as Sharon says, the spider. And I think, yeah, all of us have got them in one or other way, you know.
Then I think it's started to reflecting about the wording that made me pause sometimes and then decide to either sit or stand up. Because, for instance, you mentioned I'm a fraud. That word fraud is a very that was a tough word to me. So, you know, there are also these elements that you start to discuss with yourself. But fraud, are you a fraud? No, that's not it. So that came to me.
Okay. Interesting.
Also noticing.
Oh, you go, Philip.
Thanks. Sorry, forgive me. I noticed something picking up on what Claudia said earlier, that some of the statements I resonated with so well, and my inner voice said, "Well, that's just not a belief, Philip. That's true." And it's just interesting to observe the depth to which some of these beliefs have entered into my being, such that the 3 levels of iceberg that you took us through, Sharon, some of them I would argue with you know, but that is me. Of course, the part of me that can observe that I'm saying that isn't me. So I've still got some observational credence on it. But it's just interesting to observe how some of those statements seemed more than, yeah, I do that sometimes. They were more like, well, that is actually true, even though in my heart of hearts, I know they aren't.
Yeah, your experience of them is true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also I tell myself that they are true about me.
Yes.
So even though I know they're only a belief, some beliefs feel so ingrained.
Absolutely.
As to be, well, if I'm not that. The other thing is noticing how attached I can be to some of the beliefs, because the fear on the other side of a negative belief is, well, if I'm not that, then I have to be successful, and that can be even more scary.
Yeah.
So it's often a protection, you know, let me believe this because then I don't have to put myself out there, you know?
Absolutely.
I just want to make one little observation here. I mean, you said things like, I don't know enough. Now, for me, that's not a negative thing. I have really come to peace with the fact that I don't know enough, and that spurs a curiosity in me, you know, to learn. So it's not like the statements have got a negative effect on me. I know if that brings some inferiority, that could be a black widow. But on the other hand, it's really an encouragement for me, you know, that
Yeah.
I
See,
just I want to make this observation.
That particular one is a black widow for me. And it stops me from starting something because I feel like if I don't know enough, who am I to talk about this?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, if I may interject,
motivation, you know, instead of a fear.
If I can, you know, I think most of what you said, I felt was very true for me. You know, the only thing, you know, that moved me was you don't have the answer for everything. And that really moved me because that's totally true. But the rest, I think, you know, even though, you know, it's true that I'm not enough. I mean, I don't fight the idea, because the moment I fight the idea, then I have to become better. But if it's okay that I'm not enough, if it's okay that I have all these kind of limitations, you know, I can go beyond them without forcing my way out. Because I think by accepting the fact that I'm not enough, and you know that I probably am a fraud, you know, yeah, why not? You know, why not? I mean, sometimes in our life we're all being a fraud. So, you know, with everything, we're okay. I mean, the point is not reacting to the black widow, to me, as much as it is embracing the black widow and understanding that it bites only if it's afraid. If it's welcomed, it's not going to bite. And the point to me, I'm all those things you quoted, and I'm fine to be that. I'm okay. You know, now what? Everything I do, I'm grateful for doing it because I start from that place. So everything that comes beyond, it's something to be grateful about. And I think it's a pleasant experience. What imprisoned people could actually liberate some other people. Yeah. And I think it's just about the way you engage with it. You know, if I resist it, it will become me. If I embrace it, I can go beyond it in some ways. Just you know.
Yeah, I think that's key, Davide. It's how you're responding to the black widow. And as I said, different strategies work for different people. Right. But I think one of the biggest problems is where it actually creates a behavior that you start disliking about yourself. If it creates you to lash out or to treat people in a certain way because of your insecurity, and then it could be quite disempowering in your life.
You know, I think about that is because we neglected that we are that also. That's why it becomes so violent. Yeah. See, our dark side becomes violent when it's neglected. And I think, you know, when you neglect that you are, well, excuse me?
No, I mean, I said that's exactly what Jung calls individuation. He says it's when you're able to integrate your light side and your dark side, you are truly able to transcend. But most people repress the dark side and say, I shouldn't. And then it just comes out in a violent way eventually because it's so repressed. Yeah.
Yes. That's why I think welcoming and embracing what I don't like about myself is the first step to be able to manage myself in situations in which I feel I'm out of control. Because see, when I think I'm a fraud, or when I think, you know, I'm not good enough, or when I think I don't know, that limits the expression of my talent, of what I know. But if I embrace it and say, okay, fine, I'm not enough, so let's see what happens. You know, so embracing it It's more like including it rather than resisting to it. Because if I put energies in resisting to it, I withdraw from all the resources I usually have to be able to face whatever I have to face. So in fact, that really, I understand that it's automatic, but the point is, what I'm saying is that it is not, it's counterintuitive to embrace the darkness, because we don't even want to be aware of it. We don't even want to know that we are that way. And so, you know, to go from I don't want to know to embrace that, it takes a little bit of acceptance, you know. And I think if we don't, we're doomed, you know, in one of those moments in which the Black Widow takes over. Sorry, I might took up too much time.
It makes me think of a model that I use called AAI, awareness, acceptance, intention. So we can be aware of something, and it's easier to change something when you accept it for what it is without judgment. Yeah. Thanks, Davide.
Yeah, so here's your little picture of befriending the Black Widow. Can you see that, Celine? Is it on?
Yes, yes, it was on earlier. Yeah.
So what we'd like to invite you to do now is just to explore maybe one of your Black Widows in a smaller group conversation. And I've got some questions here that were introduced by Katie Byron. Where are they now? There we go. Just some thought starters. If you look at this thing that you're saying to yourself, this inner critic, is it true? Are you can you absolutely know that it's true? How do you react to that Black Widow? What happens with you? And what would it be if you didn't have that thought? What would happen if you did turn it around? And obviously, we might choose, as Davide says, to embrace it and to know it. And that enables us to turn it around, to say, okay, so I am not good enough. What can I explore beyond that? You know, without allowing that to keep me back, knowing now that it is my inner critic, knowing that I've embraced it as my Black Widow, how can I put it in perspective and say, what next? You know, what can I do with that energy if I'm able to embrace it? So we invite you just to have a short conversation in groups of, how many are we saying, Celine? 3 in a group?
2 or 3, yeah.
2 or 3. And just give each other equal time. How are we doing for time?
I think we should keep it to about 10 minutes. So that
10
we've got
minutes.
time. Yeah.
Okay. So just accept the invitation when it pops up in your screen to go into a breakout room.
Hi,
I
Heather.
think I accidentally came out of the breakout room there. I don't think
I've done that before. I saw that you did that, so I thought, let me go find out if she's okay. So I was.
No, I didn't. No, it came up and said you'd 59 seconds left, and I thought I was clicking stay in the room, and I think I pressed leave breakout room. So I've left. Is it Joan talking to no one? That's very sad.
I'm sure she'll come back. Yeah, she is.
Sorry, Dawn, I pressed the wrong button. My apologies.
No worry. I was thinking, is she coming back? No, she's not coming back. So no worries. Yeah.
Sorry about the time for these sessions are always way too short, and that's a very deep topic. It was just meant to start getting you thinking a little bit more about the Black Widow. But let's just have a few reflections.
No.
Jim?
It was marvelous. We are a free will group, though. We could tack on 15 minutes for the next session, just an idea. But I thought it was really, it was talking about artificially imposed barriers. Anyways, I thoroughly enjoyed that, thinking about my behavior and then my beliefs and my identity. And I got this hairy Black Widow spider I need to tame.
Yeah, good.
I found it really interesting when you have the question of what would life be like if you weren't, if the Black Widow spider wasn't taking control the whole time and you were able to let go of those beliefs or, embrace it. And it's funny how the feeling really quickly changes when you start visualizing life without these intense beliefs that aren't very helpful. Got to get there next.
Yeah, so Kylie, it's almost about changing the self-talk a little bit. I mean, shifting it a bit to say, rather than being fearful, become curious. That's interesting. There's Arthur again, there he is on my shoulder again. Isn't that interesting? I wonder why he's popping up right now for me. And how can I choose another response now, knowing that I will integrate Arthur and embrace him and pacify him for this moment. It's almost working with it through changing what you say to yourself in the moment that he pops up or she pops up in your life. And
it's almost being more playful.
Sorry?
Like being a bit more playful with it and not so serious. Like, here he is, hello. Like, a bit more kind of, light-hearted with the spider.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Carly, well, my spider, before I knew she was a spider, her name is Cami, and she wears different multicolored tutus. And when she jumps up, I'm like, oh, you're wearing a blue tutu today. That's interesting. It doesn't always work, but the fact that she's got a name and a persona and her hair's like, she's like the opposite of me, anyway, I won't go into what she is because that's going to share my beliefs. But yeah, staying playful is, I think, the key here. Keeping a sense of humor, because it'll help with the acceptance part that Davide was speaking about earlier. Like, we are who we are, and isn't that just beautiful?
Yeah, I would just like to share quickly, Claudius, in honor of you remember my dark light of the soul, and I just want to. It's a long story, but I don't want to tell the whole thing. Just one thing, that I realized that I was up for a tremendous challenge. And I had this beautiful thing that my life is there to add value to other people, and it's such a beautiful thing. But that became my Black Widow, such a beautiful value, because what I realized, and that is what Claudius helped me to see 2-3 years ago, I'm actually giving my power away. And I think, Davide, that's also a discussion that the two of us had, to other people. I now become dependent on their approval. And the big thing is in that event where I was now supposed to perform, and Davide says, well, in terms of now waiting for what their feedback will be, why don't you just be the best that you can be in the moment? Own your own power and don't give it away to this Black Widow. And mine had this wedding dress on her, she said, you are here to give value to other people. I said, no, you are here to be the best you can be in the moment. And not giving your power away, but owning it. And not, so I thought I just wanted to share that.
I have a question. What happens when something like that, I totally understand where you are, because I've got very similar things. I really love helping people and you know, being available, and it feeds a part of my soul that really requires that to feel joyful and happy. But I don't feel from my own perspective that I need it to the exclusion of myself. So I feel, you know, I've moved into a space where I'm actually quite confident with who I am, but still being available and still offering that kind of, I'm open to helping. It's part of me, and I quite like the fact that it sort of feeds something in me that is required in order for me to be happy. So if I removed completely that element of myself, there's a gaping hole that I don't feel necessarily would be filled with too many other things, because that's just part of who I am. So I've kind of embraced it, and I love it, and I always look for opportunities where because I understand and know that about myself, where I can actually feed that little bit of me. So sometimes that Black Widow it's not a bad thing, and I've always used every little Black Widow that's popped up to push me into a really uncomfortable place where I'm either learning something, growing, or really understanding that that's not a place that I want to go back to.
Yeah, but that's what Jung calls individuation. It's using that power of the Black Widow to embrace the world, to step out of yourself. In other words, it's driving you towards something.
Yes.
And through that driving you towards something, you're defining yourself more specifically in the world as, this is my unique talent, or this is the purpose, and this is how I add value to others. It's not what's the word? Debilitating. It's actually empowering in that sense.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And I think it was also quite, sorry.
No, because I think that is true intimacy with yourself.
Yeah.
Is to be able to be with the parts that are not so nice and embrace them. Yeah. And I'm just conscious, because I know Heather has an engagement that she needs to go to, and if anybody needs to leave, feel free to do so. But if you'd like to stay and finish off your cup of coffee, I'm staying for sure.
I do need to leave. I'm sorry, ladies. Yeah. But thank you so much again for a fantastic cafe, and I shall see you next week.
Thank you, Ash.
Ciao.
Arrivederci. I appreciate the chat today. Just to very briefly say, Joan and I had a quick discussion as well about using the Black Widow to your advantage. And if you feel, certainly in my life, if I felt I'm not good enough at something, it's just made me more determined to be better at it. And I think that's the way that I certainly deal with the doubt. To me, a Black Widow is a doubt, self-doubt. And I've been able to, in many areas, not in all of them, but in many areas, turn that self-doubt into determination to be better. So that's kind of how I view it. So thank you very much. Nice to see you.
Thanks, Heather.
Bye.
I also have to run, but thank you for a lovely discussion today.
Thanks, Anna. Nice to see you.
Bye.
And me too. Thank you, lovelies.
Thank you, Philip.
Speak to you soon. Take care.
Bye, Philip.
Bye.
That was amazing.